U.S. and China are engaged in a diplomatic clash over the Tibet issue. As the U.S. imposed visa restrictions on Chinese officials, China immediately announced countermeasures against U.S. personnel.
On the 14th, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said in a regular briefing, the U.S.'s imposition of visa restrictions on Chinese officials, under the pretext of the Tibet issue, is a serious violation of international law, and that China has decided to respond with equivalent visa restrictions. The Tibet mentioned here refers to the Tibet Autonomous Region of China, and the Chinese government regards this region as its own territory and treats it as a sensitive internal issue. Spokesperson Lin stated, Tibet is an open place and friendly. Foreigners are welcome to visit, travel, and do business, but if some foreign figures try to interfere in China's internal affairs under the pretext of human rights, religion, or culture, we strongly oppose it. China's response is a direct response to the U.S. State Department's earlier announcement of visa restrictions on Chinese officials related to Tibet. On the 31st of last month, the United States announced that it would impose visa restrictions on officials responsible for China's foreign access restrictions policy, stating that the Chinese government continues to block access to Tibet by American diplomats, journalists, and international observers. The U.S. position is as follows. China strictly controls the flow of information and foreign entry into the Tibet region, while its diplomats and journalists are free to operate within the United States, which is a criticism that goes against the principle of reciprocity. However, China maintains its position that Tibet is a sensitive internal matter that should not be subject to foreign interference, and continues to respond by utilizing the anti-foreign international sanctions, law and diplomatic restraints that have continued in recent years. What is important in this case is that neither the U.S. nor China have disclosed the names or specific identities of the individuals subject to sanctions. In other words, while exchanging pressure beyond symbolic measures, both countries also seem to be attempting to control tensions to some extent. The Tibet issue is not simply a human rights or religious issue, but rather a symbolic point, where China's sovereignty and America's global human rights diplomacy clash. Experts see these mutual sanctions as a signal that, while they may not have a significant short-term impact, they could deepen strategic distrust between the two countries.
A symbolic diplomatic measure called visa restrictions, but behind it lies a more complex strategy and conflicting values.